Thanks for joining me today. We had a high number of COVID cases yesterday, and I think it is important to emphasize that over the longer term, we are doing quite well in Manitoba. We're doing well in terms of our recovery. We're doing quite well in terms of our relative number of cases. Our economic numbers released by Stats Canada this morning show that we continue to be one of the leading provinces in Canada in terms of creating job opportunities, giving people their lives back across the province, and in suppressing the incidence of COVID among our citizens. That being said, it's a concern that we all feel and we all share because we understand COVID's here, it's a reality, and as Dr. Roussin says, it's not going to go away soon. Nous nous portons bien en termes de reprise. Les chiffres économiques publiés par Statistique Canada ce matin montrent que nous sommes l'une des principales provinces en matière de création d'emplois et de redonner la vie aux gens partout dans la province. The numbers released today don't show that we're smart to run a victory lap. They show, though, that over 60% of Manitobans who've lost their jobs because of COVID are now back at work. And overall, our provincial unemployment rate has edged down to 8.2%, which is the lowest in Canada. Overall, the provincial unemployment rate for young people as well is down and at the lowest level in Canada as well. Full-time employment was up by 6,200 persons. 6,200 Manitobans were able to return to work full-time between the end of June and the end of July, according to Statistics Canada. That is over double the national average, by the way. But again, I would say that we are not there yet, and I think on behalf of those many Manitobans who would like to get back to work, I think it's important to emphasize that. We're going to be extending our GAP program. That GAP program has been subscribed to by over 8,500 Manitoba small businesses. We're going to extend that program because we're not there yet. And because, if you ask me what my reasons are for our government extending the GAP program, I'd say we have 34,265 reasons, because that's the number of Manitobans that were employed a year ago that aren't employed now. We're going to extend that program until the end of October. And I should mention as well and repeat that we are going to be extending, as we previously announced, the job subsidy program as well. Because what we're finding is that Manitoba, though it is reopening faster than many parts of the country, is still not reopened, and there are a number of small businesses that are still looking to add staff and looking for supports through this challenging time, and we want to assist them as we have up till now. But I also want to emphasize that this is not the time for a victory lap for another very important reason. The success that we've had in terms of economic restart is entirely due to our willingness to follow the fundamentals that our public health officials have repeated ad infinitum to us, and we need to follow those fundamentals because health security is necessary for economic recovery. These two things are intertwined. They are not separate from one another. And if you care, and I know Manitobans care very much about the success of their small businesses and the people who work in them, and I know that Manitobans care very much about being able to get the services and the goods from the many small businesses around our province. If you care, act like it. And follow the fundamentals. Help people get their lives back. Help yourself as well. The progress we've made to date, I emphasize again, has been because we have been following the fundamentals, and that's what we must continue to do. Now, we need to get that message out, and Dr. Roussin and I and Minister Friesen and the media have been helpful, I think, in repeating the need for us to follow these fundamental behaviors of hand washing and of making sure we stay home when we're sick, and of making sure that we keep our hands away from our face, and making sure especially that we observe and respect social distancing practices. But we know that those messages need to be repeated. And so next week we'll be launching a public awareness campaign in support of getting those messages out and making sure that we repeat them and then making sure that Manitobans remember them. I know, and we all know, that we're people who love our summers. And I know that at this beautiful time of year, with all the temptations this beautiful weather presents to us, that there is a real danger that we let our guard down. And we are tempted to do that, but we must not. It's obvious that that guard has been let down in some parts of our province, and it's obvious that it can't be down again. Work is what Manitobans want, and they want safe work. And the safety and the work go together, hand in hand. And it can only be safe work if you follow the fundamentals. Customers have to follow the fundamentals when they're in a store. Workers have to follow the fundamentals when they're working. Small business owners have to follow the fundamentals and make sure that they're observed and respected in their place of business. Le travail, est-ce que les gens ont vu au Manitoba, travail sécuritaire. Mais ce n'est peut-être un travail sécuritaire que si vous suivez les principes fondamentaux, les clients doivent suivre les principes fondamentaux, les travailleurs doivent suivre les principes fondamentaux. Les petites entreprises aussi doivent suivre les principes fondamentaux. Following the fundamentals and supporting each other in doing that, and being patient and supportive of one another as we do that. But those who have the most at stake, I would submit, are the unemployed people in our province right now. And they and their families deserve to be a part of making this V happen. This downside that happened is real. We need the upside to be real also. It is starting, but we need it to continue. And so I emphasize again, be a part of making that V happen. Be a part of helping your friends and neighbors, your family, get their lives back, get their jobs back by following the fundamentals. I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Today we will go to the telephone first to the Winnipeg Sun, James.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Premier. James from the Winnipeg Sun here. It looks like you mentioned that COVID-19 is not going away, and I'm wondering if it's possible to reach a point where government can't continue to spend to stimulate the economy. Is this something you think about?
Yeah, obviously the performance of the economy is what provides the tax revenue so governments can operate programs like healthcare, education, childcare, do infrastructure investments. I'm always concerned about that. Some have argued I'm too concerned about that, but I recognize that there's a limit to how much tax people can pay, and there's a limit to how much of a burden we can place on future generations. But our programs are the right programs, designed in the right way, to function at the right time, to help generate jobs. And those jobs generate profits back to government. As people earn money, they, of course, pay tax on it. And so our programs are helping us lead the way in recovery, and I would submit they are designed to assist us in moving back towards balance and towards sustainability as soon as we possibly can, because that's what our healthcare system depends upon. That's what our education system depends upon. That's what our childcare depends upon. There's no money tree behind the legislature. Our taxes come from hardworking people, and we need to make sure that we help get jobs for those people safely.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Premier. Just one more quick question, if I may. I'm just wondering about the Maple Leaf plant in Brandon, and I'm wondering what's your opinion on whether or not it should be closed, so all workers can be tested.
Well, my opinion is that whatever progress we've enjoyed up to this point in time is due to two things. One, that we're following the fundamentals very, very well, and we need to continue to do that. But secondly, we're also respecting the advice of health experts. And so Dr. Roos will be available later today to answer any questions you might have about the rationale around why the decisions that the health officials make are made. But I would simply advise Manitobans to understand that we have people who devote their lives and their careers to studying proper health policy, and we're following their recommendations with some success, so we'll continue to do that.
From CBC Radio Canada, Ezra.
Hi, Mr. Pallister. So people are going back to work, but schools are going to open soon. And I've been talking to parents, and one of the thing that scared them is how they're going to be able to manage, the work and the school in that situation. And they're kind of asking from the flexibility from the employers to allow sometimes parents to keep their kids in school. Are you going to help parents and convince employers to be flexible?
Yeah, thanks, Ezra. There are many questions that parents have parents, staff, students, administrators about the school reopenings. And so we've had numerous discussions since the announcements just a few days ago were made. I think there is a really important responsibility we have as government to get out more of the planning and the recommendations that are there to the public so they can have a look at them. So that's planned for next week. And I think that that'll be an important thing to make sure that families, most of all, are confident that we have the right plans in place to protect their children and to make sure they have a healthy and safe learning environment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Merci.
From CTV Winnipeg, Charles.
Morning, Mr. Premier. Charles with CTV News Winnipeg. Just again following up on Maple Leaf, is there any? There's been 8 infections, 8 employees that have reported to have COVID-19 at that plant this week. Is there any point when the province will step in if the cases keep growing to either shut down the plant or do a deep cleaning? Is there a point when the province would step in to deal with this issue?
Yes, absolutely. When our health officials recommend that, that'll happen immediately.
And I have a follow-up question. Walmart Canada next week, they're following their American counterparts, going to start mandating masks at stores. Several other businesses across the country have mandated masks for indoor places. Several communities have mandated masks, and even a Goldman Sachs economist has said before that mandating masks could potentially help out the economy. My question is, will the province of Manitoba eventually be making masks mandatory for Manitobans as a way to potentially help mitigate the spread of COVID-19, and when could this potentially be made?
Well, again, we'll follow the advice of our health experts. There's much debate about masks right now. It's become the topic of choice. I would say that the most important thing to remember, and this is not to divorce ourselves from discussing masks, but the most important thing to remember is to practice social distancing, to make sure you stay home when you're sick, to make sure you wash your hands regularly, to make sure that you're not touching your face, to make sure that you're doing the right things fundamentally in the absence of a mask. That doesn't absent us from the discussion on masks, but it does make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to protect ourselves without the necessity of making mandatory masks in all circumstances.
From the Brandon Sun, Colin.
Mr. Premier, I was wondering, with the job recovery we've seen, are you still concerned that the CERB is still a barrier to people returning to work, or is that concern lessened with today's news?
Well, I've always been concerned about the design of the CERB program, communicated that over the last 10 weeks, and the federal government has responded without changing the design, but simply announcing that it's gone at the end of August and will be replaced by as yet to be defined EI program of some description. So we wait for detail on that program. I can only tell you that our program here, which was designed to help restart our economy and give people the opportunity to get back to work without being penalized for earning more than $1,000 a month, was subscribed to by 4,500 Manitobans over the past less than 5 weeks. And quite frankly, without that program, 2/3 of our new jobs were full-time. And so the people who used that program went from not working or working part-time to working full-time. So it's a significant achievement, and that's a significant re-entry into the workforce, in part at least due to the fact that we offered to reduce the penalty that workers would experience under the CERB program, and took that burden away from working families so that people were able to return to work. So I would argue we designed that program to affect positive change, and today's StatsCan numbers demonstrate that we have positive change. We're leading the country now in many categories of getting people back to work. So that's what we want to continue to do. We can only do that, again, I emphasize, if we follow the fundamental social distancing practices and others, so that we can have safe places for people to work, safe places for customers, safe places for small businesses to operate. Safe places overall mean that we can have an economic recovery. Unsafe places mean we can't.
My second question is regarding the number of recent cases we've had in Prairie Mountain Health. Over the last week, I believe there have been 2 or 3 businesses in the region that have had to shut down because of positive COVID cases. With this recent spike, how worried are you that these unemployment numbers are going to continue to climb if businesses think it's unsafe to be open?
I'm extremely worried, and that's why I'm making the statements I am today. We're going to encourage increased use of our government programs, but that can only happen with safety happening at the same time. The two things aren't separate, they're intertwined. No one has more at stake in this than small business owners, and generally small business owners in Manitoba have been tremendously supportive, very cognizant of the importance of safety for their workers and their customers, because they have a lot at stake. And I thank them for the responsible attitude they've shown. And I also thank the thousands of Manitoba small businesses who've applied for our work programs, because this is meaning that they're actually investing in hiring people and getting them back to work. Our job programs, by the way, have resulted in over 15,000 Manitobans returning to work. And that is, well, to put it bluntly, that puts us at first in the country in reducing unemployment. If we did not have those job programs, and if theoretically no one else of those 15,000 had gone back to work without them, we'd be 8th. So they do make a difference. They're not the only thing. The most important thing is safety. But these incentives, the right programs at the right time, are helping to encourage our small business sector to get through the valley of difficulty and challenge they're all facing. But the real way we can help them is not just by supporting them and shopping in their stores and so on, or buying from them online. It is also by encouraging all of us to remember that safety is the key to this recovery. There is nothing more important than that.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. We now go to room 68 for questions from our reporters gathered there. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Back in March, your government overruled public health when it took kids out of school a week ahead of what public health was recommending at the time. Why not, out of abundance of caution, look at a temporary shutdown at Maple Leaf this time, given what we saw in Alberta?
Yeah, no, I don't accept your preamble, Bartley. We did have discussion with public health. They had, you're right, they had expressed preliminary view that schools could remain open for a week, but after discussion with public health and a number of questions being raised and a good discussion, we arrived jointly at a recommendation to proceed earlier. I'm not ruling that out, that decision-making process out on future decisions. It's a consultative process. It's a way of arriving at a course of action that we can agree to, and that's exactly what will follow as we move forward.
And changing topics, we see drilling into the economic numbers, it's good news for almost every sector, but women are still down. Well, male and female unemployment are similar right now. Mm-hmm. Women were doing better before, and they're still down more than men. Obviously, childcare is part of that. Why proceed with the changes to childcare right now, which some critics are saying will make it more difficult for people with certain economic means? Why proceed with those changes given the fact that it's been more difficult for women?
Well, I'm not sure if we can isolate just the child care reality, though that is an important priority for our government. In this instance, in Manitoba and nationally, not without some minor exceptions, the major industry categories that have been impacted, hospitality, food services, have significantly higher female than male employment. This is part of our motivation, quite frankly, with our job creation programs, is to encourage more rehiring in those very sectors. Part of our motivation, of course, in applying for a safe hub site for CFL here, with major health stipulations that are far in excess of what Manitobans have to face right now, is so that we can create those job opportunities in both those sectors and others for people who work there. A disproportionate number of them are female. So, yeah, it's on our radar, certainly, to make sure that we do a good job of helping people get back to work, and we want to make sure that that's men and women, and that's what seems to be happening thus far.
And what do you say to the workers at the Maple Leaf plant who say they're scared to go back to work, that now there's 8 cases and they're just worried about going to work and catching the virus and bringing it home?
Well, as I've said before, I'm quite open about this. I'm scared too. I'm scared for them. I'm scared for us. I'm scared for every Manitoban. I'm scared enough, I think, for everybody. But the fact of the matter is that the company there has taken every step that it's been asked to and more, that the public health officials have evaluated that. They're in constant contact with that company and others that have had workplace incidents of COVID. And so again, I think that I would say to them that they deserve to feel confident because we are following the best health advice that we can get here in Manitoba, and we're going to continue to.
And Saskatchewan is sharing numbers with the public about how many COVID cases are being found in communal multiple living settings, and that's, I'm guessing, to try to encourage people to shop at businesses in towns and to not be afraid that it's in their towns or their communities. But Dr. Wilson said yesterday, we're not going to do that. We don't want to stigmatize anybody. We're not going to refer to cases in multiple communal living settings. What are your thoughts on that? Do you? Well,
Dr. Wilson and I have developed, I think, a growing relationship of trust, and that doesn't mean we agree on everything any more than in a family. We think our family's stronger if we never disagree. I mean, sometimes we disagree. In this instance, we've had some good discussion about advancing additional detail to the public because I think that it is important. For example, I'll be very clear on this. Saying there's a problem in a health region when our health regions in rural Manitoba are so big, it creates a fear across the whole region that I don't want to see happen. Carol, you alluded in your first preamble to the fear of workers in one work site. But imagine the fear when you hear there are a dozen cases in one health region. If you're in that health region, you're afraid. I'd like to see greater detail released, and so there are discussions underway on how that might be able to be done. Always respecting, of course, the rights to privacy on health information that individuals have.
Moving back to the job numbers, almost even split between full-time and part-time work. We know that youth or younger people, particularly in hospitality industries, retail, substantially affected. Do you think this is a good snapshot of how our economy is improving? Is that a good mix of what kind of jobs we need to return?
Yeah, I'm not at all displeased with the global numbers, but I'm not satisfied we're there yet. We have over 30,000 Manitobans that are counting on us to do everything we can to help them get their jobs back. And so again, I think the programs are designed so that you can use them. I'm talking now about the work subsidy programs, so you can use them to rehire people, whether full-time or part-time, whether youth or adult, doesn't matter. And as you know, we expanded those programs just a few weeks ago so that you can hire up to 10 people under that program. Now, many people have used these programs already, up to 5, Many companies have used them up to 5, but they now have the chance to do an additional 5 employees, and I think that's really good. I also think it's important to understand that for many students, as I was, it isn't that you're just looking for a job till the end of August. You might be looking for part-time work while you're in full-time studies, and for many Manitoba young people, that is exactly what they're hoping for. So our programs are designed to assist people in getting work by assisting the companies that do the hiring in hiring. But again, I got to go back to how important it is that we all stick to the fundamentals and make sure that we're safe and creating a safe environment for these people to work.
And my, sorry, Carol.
No, go ahead.
My understanding is we are 3rd highest among provinces in terms of employment rise. What does that say about our, in July rather, what does that say about our economy and its strength in recovering so far? And I mean, I know that's coupled with relatively low numbers here, but what does that mean for how we're doing?
We're among the leaders in the country. There are a number of reasons for that. We have a very diverse economy that assists us. But I still give credit to the people of Manitoba for following the health fundamentals really, really well. We've been able to take early action, preventative action, protective action to the greatest extent possible to keep COVID out of our seniors' homes almost totally, out of our northern communities totally, out of our prisons totally. The government does deserve, I think, my government does deserve some credit for that action, but it couldn't happen without the cooperative support of Manitobans who work there, who are running and managing those facilities, and the people who live there too. So Manitobans deserve the credit for this, the success we've experienced thus far. And quite frankly, they'll deserve the credit if we continue to make success happen. We have tens of thousands of people who would rather get back to work and who would like to have a job. And so I encourage Manitobans to support their small businesses, as I always do, but also I encourage those small businesses to avail themselves of the government support that can assist them in getting back to an operational standard pre-COVID. We're only about halfway there in terms of our companies in Manitoba by our numbers. In terms of full employment, many companies are part way back, but they're not all the way back. And so this is why we're extending the programs that we're extending, to offer that incentive and to offer a reduced risk to small businesses. When they do hire someone, they know that, yes, they'll get 50% of that wage back as a subsidy at the end of the period of employment. So up to $5,000 per employee and up to 10 employees max. It's a good program. It's the most generous in Canada, and it is working. And we need to continue to make sure that we make it work, but it can only work without adherence to the fundamentals of maintaining public safety.
About adhering to the fundamentals of public safety, you know, yesterday we were told that the cluster in Brandon is connected to someone who arrived on a flight and didn't, you know, perfectly self-isolate at home. And I'm just wondering, you know, people were asking, is there going to be any enforcement? Will there be any, you know, Dr. Roussen's always been very careful to say, we don't want to punish people, we want to educate people, and if you know, punish people, you're not going to get buy-in, and people aren't going to be forthcoming. So I'm just wondering, is there anything more or anything that we should be doing now that we're so vulnerable to something like that happening to go after people when they're not doing what they should be doing?
Yeah,
if so many people are affected?
Yeah, it's a question I get a lot, Carol. It's a fair question. I think that there's a lot of concern that some of us are relaxing a bit too much during the summer, or that we're becoming the victims of our own success a little bit. And I think that's why a public awareness campaign at this point in time is needed. It'll serve as a reminder, a reinforcer to those of us who are continually repeating these messages, to have them repeated in different, in different media and in different ways. And I also think it will serve to encourage others to repeat that message among their circle. So for example, there is a danger, and I'll raise this. We've seen it already, and it's medically been researched. a danger that people get complacent when they are in a mask environment and they stop social distancing. The correlation is real. And so people get comfortable. We all have masks on. Let's get together and talk like this. We got to be educating each other about the dangers of these things and reminding each other of the importance of social distancing, even in a mask environment. So that's just one example. And I think there are many others, but we want to make sure that we're helping improve public awareness and improve, obviously, the respect that we're all needing to show to protecting ourselves and to protecting one another as well.
Your government pledged about quarter of $1 billion for business and employment aid. Less than $100 million has been accessed. What kind of changes are you going to make to those programs to make them actually more enticing or useful for the economy?
Well, we're on track. I think that our subscription rates are where we expected them, where we hoped they'd be. I'd like to see them a little higher, and I think this is why extending these programs is going to be helpful. Not all businesses could reopen in the last 3 months or so. Some of them are just now starting to reopen, so the GAP program for them is going to be very helpful. The job subsidy program also, as people add staff, is going to be helpful. That's why we doubled the eligibility from 5 employees max to 10. But there's no doubt that none of these programs on their own are going to make up for the losses that many parts of our economy have suffered and that many companies have suffered as a consequence of COVID. The programs were designed to assist small and medium-sized companies chiefly, and they're not going to be of great assistance to members of the Manitoba Business Council, as an example, who employ thousands of people. That's where the federal programs were designed. And so we've designed our programs at the right time and the right way to complement what the federal government's programs are, or in some cases, frankly, to counteract with CERB. I say again, there was a perverse consequence to cutting people off CERB when they make over $1,000. We designed our programs to help people not be punished, basically, and that program is going to be over now because of course the CERB program is over. But we look forward to detail from the federal government on what their next steps are on their employment insurance program, because until we're back to full bore, we've got 30,000+ people that are going to need a support of some kind.
So just to be clear, no changes planned to the current subsidy programs as they're extended, beyond the extension of programs.
No, well, the extension is the key, because up till now, small businesses, and we'd heard this from our network of people within small business groups and so on, that there wasn't enough awareness, and so we're addressing that with the public service announcements. B, that for many companies, they're just now getting going, and so to cut the programs off at the end of August was not going to help them. And so we've extended both programs. Previously, as I said, the Works Subsidy Support Program, and now today, the GAP program. So, sorry, Bart, our hope is, as I said in answer to an earlier question about, are you concerned about deficits? Yeah, of course, because, that just the interest alone on those is money that we don't have to use for things today, and it's a burden on our future generation and us when we're older. So, of course, I'm concerned about deficits, but I'm mostly concerned that we invest in things that help us get out of this mess, and quite frankly, helping people get back to work by following the proper fundamentals is the key to doing that.
Is there anything that gives you hope that there might be a CFL season? And if so, what is that?
I'm emboldened by the fact that the CFL players and the CFL organizers aren't trying to negotiate with each other through the media.
Manitoba created 12,000 jobs. Saskatchewan created 13,000 jobs. Your thoughts on that?
Well, they were further behind us, so it's easier for them to catch up. I want to close by saying a thank you to a friend of mine. His name is Stephen McNeil. He's a dandy person. He's announced he's stepping down as Premier of Nova Scotia. He was, until recently, the longest-serving Premier in the country. He has served the people of Nova Scotia tremendously well for close to 2 decades. I know this wouldn't have been an easy decision for him. I understand he was planning on stepping down earlier, but the pandemic changed his timing. But I know that he is well respected among his peers, and I do hope that when we have our national meetings, they are tentatively slated for towards the end of September. Premiers and Prime Ministers meet, that I will have a chance to give him best wishes personally, but I wanted to just express my respect and thanks to him. Thank you.